as dungeon masters, everybody has those little things that they do differently at their table. Things that they, over time, through experience, you kind of discover, oh, that works really well when I do this, or my players love it when I blah, blah, blah. And so tonight is going to be about all those things. These four DMs and myself, we're going to be sharing some of those quick little tricks that, as DMs, we have accrued over the collective years. We are going to start with Chris. Chris, which one do you want to share? You got a couple of good ideas there.
The first thing I'm going to start off with is I have got some apps that I use that I'm constantly addicted to. And I can actually run an entire game just off of my phone. So I've got a whole little panel of 1,000 different little apps. Some of the really great ones, Fight Club 5 from Lion's Den. Then there's also another series, I can't remember who guys are from. Put that on there.
Oh, yeah.
But the great thing is these are editable, so you can put in additional content past the SRD. There's also some download sources you can find out on the net and download those. And it just makes it so much easier if I don't have to dig through 8 books and try and find this because somebody's got a question about their subclass or something like that. I can hit 2 buttons, pull up the subclass, and tell them, no, you can't. It says right there. To which the rogue, who inevitably it is, says, well, I had to try.
So what would you say are your, like, what's your number one mainly used app, the one that you use the most?
Probably Lion's Den Fight Club 5. Actually, first time I heard about it, I was watching old Critical Role, and Mercer was using it for some stuff.
So I'm unfamiliar with what it is. Can you explain what it is? Give me the elevator pitch.
Well, it's actually 2 apps. There's Fight Club and there's Game Master. Game Master, you can run a campaign. Fight Club, is mainly a character generator. So you can pull up different characters, make an entire sheet out of them. But it also has a compendium that has quick reference. So you have item lists, you have full spell lists. The spells are broken up by classes, and if there's special domains or things like that, subclasses that you can go through. There's also a rules compendium, which gives you basically a DM screen. Okay. Where you can jump through, look through all the different condition stats and everything like that. And then on the Game Master side of it, which is its a little side app, you can actually import the characters that you've made. So I've made NPCs and villains in Fight Club, imported them over into Game Master, and then set up encounters. And it also auto balances, and you can load different monsters and just create entire encounters and go back and forth. And I even have all the player characters on the running. Built up in Fight Club and imported over, so I can do true comparisons and power levels with that and keep track of their XP, and super handy across a campaign.
Yeah, I remember before I got a lot of the books, I had found a spell app for 5e, and it was crazy how much easier. Obviously, it was easier to type in the name of a spell, because you didn't have to think, well, is that in the player's handbook? Is that in Tasha's? Is that in Xanathar's? It's all right there. And I know at least one of my players uses that app for all his spells.
I would like one of the main things that you get with online resources is really the indexing, the ability to be like, to like go through the filters and find exactly precisely what you're looking for when it comes to like spells or player features or even monsters, especially when you're like playing out an encounter. Like I would have so much more work on my hands if I didn't have the online resources I used.
A lot of those apps will have filters that you can set up. So like 5e items is one of the apps I use. And I can go in and set, okay, it's going to be a weapon, martial or simple. Martial, okay, how much damage does it do? D8. And is it magic? Yes. And it'll filter all of that through. So if I want to give my paladin a magic sword and not a holy avenger, it'll give me a list of options that I can throw out there real quick.
as much as I love having the books, because that's just part of my personality, having the physical thing is awesome. I mean, to have 2.5 shelves of stuff here is pretty handy for sure.
Yeah, all of it fits on the tablet.
Yeah, there you go.
Mine over there.
Yeah. Mana, let's move on to you. You have a couple of neat ideas. I'm curious about your in-character rumor mills. Can you tell us
Yeah.
about that?
Absolutely. So I kind of keep a pocket full of interesting things about whatever stoppable towns, cities, inns your characters can stop at. That way, in case your players are kind of looking for something to do outside of the main storyline or aren't really sure, passive perception is a great tool to use. I think it's vastly underused. And, hearing, somebody at a table be like, oh, did you hear that Mayor so-and-so, blah, 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 and the players being able to kind of pick that up without having to go find a guild and a quest. And it just kind of creates a new twist on that idea, for me, at least. And I really like to, that way they can hear the rumor mills and then approach somebody organically that's maybe not part of a guild.
It seems more natural, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's a little bit more organic of an interaction rather than, going into a shop and looking for a job. And for me and my players, it helps integrate them into the setting a little bit more. If you're coming into a town and taking a random job, people might not trust you as easily. And even if you overhear something, it's a little bit more natural for conversation, and it kind of gets that trust starter a little bit, and then then you can pull other NPCs out who might be interested and things like that, and it helps the players feel a little bit more part of the world, I have found.
Well, and what I love about those NPC interactions is you're not quite sure how the players are going to deal with whatever they find. I know that in an Icewind Dale game that I'm running, because they'll include things like that. They'll include, like, if the players are hanging around in a tavern, a city square, etc., that kind of stuff. Here's a roll table of rumors that they might hear. And so you roll and you hope you get something good. And then it's interesting because sometimes you play with people that are like, we got to deal with that right now. Let's go. And as a DM, you're like, that's kind of intended for a few levels from now, but sure, I'm not going to tell you that.
Okay.
But go ahead.
Get it over their heads.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then another thing that, like, off of that is, like, sometimes it might go too soon, or sometimes, you have those things of, like, oh, so-and-so's having issues with their stock being stolen. And you sometimes, depending on the party you have, it might be like, well, let's go find who's stealing it and help them, or let's go find who's stealing it and catch them and stop them. And you don't know which way your players are going to go, and it's always just kind of like, well, let's find out.
Any time you can put something to your players that allows them to choose which direction they go, as opposed to, hey, this is the problem and this is how you solve it.
Yeah.
Anytime that you can say, there's something interesting here, and then let them decide how they're going to deal with it. That's kind of the heart of the game there.
Yeah, and I find, as players love making their own choices. It's no fun to just kind of be horse and carted along. It's at that point they're not telling the story with you. So this kind of allows them to have that choice a little bit.
I've had a similar situation at my table where I run a very open world game, and so they would go to the square to do and finish off a quest or some other line they're doing, and end up coming across there is some commotion at the government hall, and there's a protest or someone's giving a speech, and some of the players do choose I'm gonna interact with that. So it's nah, I got something I want to do. I don't really care too much about what's going on there. I'm gonna continue on. But it does kind of present another avenue for you to kind of feed in adventure hooks and the for your players to choose to go on to, and it's a really good way to actually gauge their interest in certain topics too.
Yes, that's exactly a good thing too, because if you toss a rumor out there that they don't seem too interested in, you kind of like go down your list and bucket list, like, okay, kind of cross those off for future reference.
Shane, you also have something to do with NPCs. 3, I commend you on your choice of word tenet.
Oh yeah.
That's a great word. It sounds very official. 3
Very regal.
tenets of running an ally NPC. What? Go ahead and explain that.
The 3 tenets of running an ally NPC, things that I have tripped and stumbled across throughout my running the game in the past few years. And it's kind of come about as a way to ensure that I run my NPCs in a way that are both enjoyable for me as a DM and interesting for me, and also aids in with my players and is enjoyable for them to kind of interact with. They basically go as thusly. 1, the NPC has to be beholden to their flaws and their beliefs. This kind of makes sure that the NPC never becomes a mouthpiece for the DM. And so whenever they are consulted for, say, the answer of a problem, it's not that the information they're given is like, the gospel of DM, this is how we solve it. It's going to be colored by that owns NPCs' beliefs and their flaws. Like, a coward isn't going to suggest that the party rushes in valiantly to seize the day. They'll be like, actually, how about we just, go and find someone else to handle this problem? We don't have to go into the haunted house, really. This doesn't have to be our problem. They didn't ask for us specifically. And another thing, the second tenet would be that when it comes to combat, that the NPC is there to help, but not to dominate, not to take over. I kind of view this very much from the perspective of the NPC has a specific role in combat, whether that's to be the healer because they need one, or to give a little bit more damage that's needed, or to have like the versatility of spell casting or skills and the like. They're not really going to deviate too much from that, so that it leaves the rest of the space for the players to kind of make the big decisions and turn the tide of the situation, so that they still feel empowered throughout play. And lastly, which kind of touched on that, but it goes into more of a broad spectrum, is the fact that your NPC, especially one that's like an ally and going to be a part of the party, is there to highlight the players, not to outshine them. The players are the protagonists. Their characters are the heroes of the story. They dictate what exactly is going on. Even you as a DM, you're just kind of the master of the plot so much, but they're the ones that decide what story is being told. And an NPC should be like any good side character, aiding in the development, like the character development of the protagonist. That's the lens that you could use in both ally NPCs and also villains and antagonists. All of them are there to kind of push and make your players and their characters deal with situations and answer questions about themselves. And through that, you kind of get the story of play. Running my NPCs like this have been very useful, and I hope that other DMs listening today could find some nugget of truth that they could bring to their tables from it.
I know that for myself, that that third one is really important. The idea that the NPC is not there to open every door and solve every problem for you.
Oh, absolutely.
And what I love about that idea is that with number 1, you said that they're a slave to their flaws and beliefs, and that is so integral, because maybe that NPC doesn't want to open that door. Maybe they want to get the heck out of there.
Yeah.
One way that I've described is that the NPCs would be there without the players. They'd be living their life without the players. But
Precisely.
the story would not be happening without the players. So life would be going on, but the story would not. Go ahead, Sean.
One thing that to add to your number 2 about in the combat, and I've done this in the past a couple times, where you have a party that's capable, but they have, as parties will do, they have to have this NPC with them.
Yeah.
And so I've literally had it where they're all out doing their fights with the real the real actual combatants of this encounter. And then there's like that one goblin or that one orc that the NPC is just back there. They're just fighting and they're having amazing standoffs and fight. It's totally inconsequential to what the actual players are doing because of the simple fact that that's an NPC orc. That's an NPC goblin. They're literally just like, hey, so you part of the union too? Kind of a thing. It's just they're Nodwigs over in the corner fighting back and forth. It doesn't matter what happens there. And I've actually had it where they've had this entire fight, and then that one runs off.
Mm-hmm. Or your NPC doesn't even take an action at all during the fight. They're too busy.
Yeah.
He's cowering, but either. But it's like if they insist on getting into the fights, just doesn't matter. That you're rolling for both of them. So, oh yeah, no, they're at a stalemate. They seem to be evenly matched, and you move on with your fight and keep it focused to the players. So it's like
and Shane, to talk about your number one too, I love that. And I've run into players who are so used to NPCs being a mouthpiece for the GM that they take NPC words as law, and I'm just behind my screen like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Like, no, it's like talking like reliable narrators and things like that. And it's like, no, don't use your NPCs as your mouthpiece, because then you have those players who will take NPC words as law, and you're like, that's okay. Have fun finding out that that's not true.
And then you have an over reliance on the NPC, like, but what does the NPC think? What should we do? And I'm like, hey, the NPC is going to tell you what the NPC thinks, not necessarily what the dungeon master thinks.
Yeah. And a good way that I've found is to at all points in time, whenever the NPCs ask for anything, they give you an answer, but it's something that they specifically want that probably is completely antithetical to what you're trying to achieve. They're going to be using you to achieve their goals at that point. If you're going to be just asking them for advice on what to do in every situation, they're going to take advantage of that a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You're a powerful adventurer. Having you indebted to me doing stuff for me, that's great.
Yeah, that's smart. I think that's an important thing. We could do a whole topic on NPCs, and I think you'd be coming back for that one. Yeah. Probably should.
Okay, absolutely.
Sean, let's move on to you. You talk about making a tavern or an inn and fleshing it out.
So I've done this in some of my old campaigns. Recently, this is actually right now my Tuesday game is my only one that I currently have it where they're in a city that's more set. So, and of course it's the Dragon Heist, so they're already getting a tavern, so I don't have to do it. They're making it for me. But I've, in my old campaigns, the Lazy Dragon Inn, it's a franchise. And so some very entrepreneurish, bloke sat there and made up this really fine, tavern/inn, and it started doing really, really well. And thus he said, well, I could make more if I had more of these, but I don't want the competition. Wait a minute. So all along a caravan route, he sets up these taverns, comes in, sells you the idea, gives you all the layout, gives you some seed money. You just got to pay him back his royalties. Now you have these inns that you can have, and everybody knows them, especially along the caravan routes. Everybody knows the Lazy Dragon. Oh, you want a decent bed? Always a good meal. The Lazy Dragon. And so it gives you, as a beginning DM, or even a busy DM, it gives you that opportunity to sit there, and when they come in and your players start looking for a place to stay, they know, oh, we know the Lazy Dragon. They can go to the Lazy Dragon. Plus, because it's a big hub center, all of your rumors that
all these things are coming together.
It's all coming together.
And you have that, because these are big and known, you have all of these caravan masters coming in, and they've got, I've got extra stuff I don't need. I need to make a quick coin to get to the next town. Anyone looking to buy something? So it's a easy place to make some quick deals and stuff. So it's those kind of things.
Please tell me that you got like almost like a Golden Arches type logo
Nope,
for Lazy Dragon. Like,
nope. It is a big red dragon, big old beer belly red dragon laying back on a pile of coins. Just
okay,
laying
that's good
Nice.
too. Yeah,
That's beautiful.
like
So,
I'm
but
trying
it
to think
was-
of the medieval version of
And-
Neon would be like,
fairy fire.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. I
You
love it.
know, artistically done fairy fire.
Our few
But-
spikes on his tail kind of flicker
Yeah.
every now and then.
Well, every now and then he's sleeping, so it's like this little puffs of fire come out the nostrils every now and then. But yeah, it makes it real easy that if you have a tavern that your players will want to go to because they know, hey, this is going to have anything I need to find out. If there's something going on in town, there's always going to be somebody here. And you make them like these nice, big, central establishments. They're not like, go down to the third corner, turn down the second alley, and keep going until someone asks you what you're doing there. This way, you're in the heart of the city. Even nobles are coming in for the slumming times. Oh, I'm going to go slum it out on the Lazy Dragon. And so you have... But then you have the heart, that dock worker that's coming in. And he's like, hey, I got paid today. I want a good meal tonight. I'm going to head up there before going home and, drop a few coins to get that. So you can have that whole cross section of your cities coming into one center, and you can tie in any rumor mill, any adventure hook, any purchase, because I said, you just do these, or they're all on these big caravan cities. And so makes it real easy when you have an established franchise that there will be little tweaks you can make depending upon that city, but for the most part it's the same style. Just everybody's that familiar. You're walking into Applebee's, okay, everybody knows the menu. Okay, you're coming, it's like, oh, I'll have the flaming Hogwarts, please, thank you. And it's like you can make it real easy on yourself to not feel pressured to like, okay, the room looks like. You establish that as you start early in your campaign, and then the players can walk in through the door and they can see it in their head already. You've got that familiar bar behind you. So
yeah, you're not having to create something new every time.
Little something like that'll make it easy. And also, like I said, if you use it enough times, the players see it in their head and they know what they're walking into, and that immediately puts them in that, all right, they start looking around for that. All right, where's the guy that's going to have that? Who's going to know the dirt on the town? We need to talk to him.
Yeah,
kind of a thing. So.
Yeah.
Nice. One that I wanted to share for DMs to encourage and basically establish at the beginning that players are in charge of the recap. That is not the DM's job. Players, number one, it gets them to take notes. It gets the DMs get to hear what has become important to the players, what kind of things caught their attention, and it gets their perspective. Because what I find as a DM when I have to do the recap, every now and then I'll say something, I'll be like, oh, wait, is that how I presented that? And my players will be like, oh, okay. And I'll realize, oh, crap, I've just said something I totally shouldn't have said.
Yeah.
So get the players to do the recap, because you get what's important to them from their characters' perspectives, and that's ultimately what you want. And it encourages note-taking. And we've all, I'm sure, played with groups where there are note takers, and then we've played with groups where there are not. And the note taking groups, I know for myself, are all amazingly more interested, involved, and they know, they're more into the game and the narration as opposed to, well, when do we get to fight? Chris, I feel like that kind of segues into your other idea about info dumps and player.
One of the things that I have done with my characters is setting up campaign worlds when the campaign is moving into a different area or group. Is I'll do individual session zeros, or even just send out quick little emails or texts or things like that, and go, okay, this is what your character with your background knows about this area. This is the history of this area. This person may know the finances of this area. This person may know the culture of this area because his grandparents came from there, so he knows, is familiar with it. That way, when it comes in, we're not rolling a lot of dice, and everyone gets to be an expert. And all this kind of exposition doesn't happen from me sitting here and talking for 20 minutes. And letting, okay, well, you know this and you know this, but you wouldn't know that. No, the people who know what they know talk it out, and then that information gets shared and crossed in role play, and they figure out from that what is important from those areas. Or this thing will come up and they'll go, oh, hey, I remember what that's about, and then tell the rest of the party. And it takes a lot of burden off of you and makes it more fun for them.
You are the only other person I have run into who has done individual session zeros. I love doing those. I think they integrate players into the world so much better than just giving those little tidbits that only they know. And then it's so interesting to see what they decide to share with one another.
Absolutely agree on that front.
Yeah.
Do a similar situation to mine, where a new player is coming in, and then they would have questions about the world or the setting, or ask them like, oh, I want to be Elven Noble from here. And I'd be like, okay. And I would just send them entire soliloquies and monologues information over Discord, and seeing it in real time in play, where they come across one of these bits of information, and then that player's eyes just light up as they just get to go off and explain through their lens and their character's lens the information I've given them. And so it really does take a weight off my shoulders. You were saying, Chris?
One of the things I'll do with the session zeros, especially the first session zeros, is I usually start my players off at level 2 or 3, because if I start them at level 1, I will kill them. I can't help it. It's just what I do.
Murder.
It's not even on purpose. It just happens. So it's safer for them.
Yeah.
One of the things we do in the session zeros is role play out how they got there. And so it'll be their first kind of battle encounters, how they became an adventurer, what got them on that path to go out. And I've even tied it in. Like I had this one Oath of the Ancients paladin who I did his entire backstory, and he went off training into the woods as the Green Man came to visit him in the form of different animals, things like that. And then later on in session, when he actually got 3rd level, took his Oath of the Ancient, those same animals came and revisited him and took the oath from him. So, it was a deer and a hawk and a thing. And it all played back to the session 0.
Yeah, that's smart. I've never thought to do that. I've had one-on-one sessions mid-campaign, but I love the idea of, here's the information you know that these people don't. And you decide how to disseminate it. It's up to you, as opposed to everything coming through the DM.
For my current game, I did try to sit there and I'm having everybody write me their backstories and send it to me before we started and got to session 1. Like, give me a backstory. I would read it, and then it can be, and some of them knew it was going to be a bad thing, but they left me huge openings in their storyline. One of them actually literally said he has no memory of prior to about 6 months ago, and he's like 22 or 23, his character. So he lost his memory. His patron offered him the opportunity to get it back. He's a warlock. I got to fill in the blank of everything else from that point. I basically did take little bits and I would go back and feeding off of their backstory, how it integrated into some of them. So some of them that were there, I would basically kind of, okay, you have this information and this is what's going on. So as you start, you have this knowledge. And not quite a full one-on-one session 0, but before the game actually started, I went back to each of them. That kind of gave me these. Some of them gave me nice, detailed, and that just creates adventure hooks. But the rest of it was feeding back onto it. So as they start, their character starts in, they have this information going into into that first session 1 that we did. But it makes it a little mini, session 0.
Well,
But
and
always ask for a backstory.
it's almost as if you guys are coordinated this a little bit. Because it feels like this once again totally segues into Shadane's next topic, right? The player questionnaire. I mean,
Oh yeah.
it's like
don't worry,
it's like we scripted it.
Don't worry, Joe. This is actually an entire elaborate ruse, and you're the only one outside of it. We've all
we had a 6-hour pre-meeting.
Yeah. But yeah, Joel's absolutely right. In fact, it's actually really interesting. We're all kind of touching on advice for the session 0 and prior, and especially when it touches on character knowledge and the like. With my sessions, I've started utilizing a character questionnaire that I have devised. It's an open-ended survey that questions the player about their character. The questionnaire itself is designed to give me gameable information that I can use to tie their character into the world and help tailor the game to like what exactly the player themselves are seeking to kind of get out of it. Some of the examples of the questions are like, who is your character helped and who they've slighted? What about does your character do they feel most confident about? What do they feel most vulnerable about? And what's their character personal goal? If someone's what is actually stopping them and what might be helping them? And especially when it comes to what's stopping them, what parts of that struggle are external and internal. All of this has really been able to, and a wealth of other questions and the like. But all of them are pieces that I can take and utilize within a game to seed in those hook and kind of tie together places. It goes into backgrounds, everything, but the most important part of the questionnaire, to me at least, is the fact that it's in the real preamble that I've written for it, it explicitly states that this is less so a interview with the character and more so interview with the player about the character, not unlike an actor being asked about a role they've asked to play. That way I can get information that the player themselves, the character themselves, might be secretive about and might not want to share. Because here's a hint to all the players that might be watching. A secret you keep from the DM is a secret that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
We can't help you.
No. How am I supposed to know your sister's missing if you don't tell me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she wasn't with me.
So Shadane, do you also have? I mean, you mentioned a lot of kind of big character ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Do you also have little things like what's your character's favorite food or?
Oh yeah. There's also that in there. What does your character do to relax? What is their greatest accomplishment that they've had? What regret do they have? Do they go by any other names aside their original? It kind of makes all these different things, especially a couple of ones that are really, really good for RP, which are 1, what would someone have heard about your character before meeting them? And 2, what is generally, after having a conversation with you, what is generally what people would take away from interacting with you for that first time? All of these things kind of allow me to especially make NPCs that have interacted with you and met you before that I can then seed in later. For example, if your character was a part of a mercenary band and he somehow managed to get the title Tusk Slayer, and he happens to come across an orc who recognizes him as the Tusk Slayer, and that entire situation kind of comes about, and I can use it to see them into the next kind of adventure that I have planned, challenge that player's own ideas, especially if they're a character that's trying to like turn a new leaf or change. It's all ways for me that I can kind of facilitate character development and progression of the story, as well as having ways of making the job of DMing a bit easier. And for everyone listening, I have a link on my Patreon for free. My entire character questionnaire, principle, and the like. I'll send links and everything later.
Yeah, because I saw that you'd posted it on Twitter today. That's awesome. So it's on your Patreon because, you know, resources are great for DMs. Free resources are even better.
I do just want to go back to Shane's point real quick in terms of the player questionnaire. You know, if I love that idea too, but you know, if your players don't want to fill out this big thing, which I think they should, you can do like weekly questions too. It really helps players kind of get into character, and you can ask those things. Sometimes they can be the big things, like Shane was talking about, you know, what's the one thing somebody would take away from them? Or they can be the little things, like this week I asked a group of mine, do they have any allergies? What are they allergic to?
Yeah.
You know, and that can kind of tie back in. And so you can do it in questionnaire form, and you can continue to do it throughout your campaign too, if you think of something, you know, and then do it each week. And it kind of helps, at least for my players, get them into the zone rather than sitting at the table and be like, okay, let's go, you know?
Yeah.
Well, and I like the idea of asking a question. See, I like to make my players a little bit paranoid. And so ask a question like as if it's leading to something, and then just make it totally innocuous. And
You know,
last night we were playing, and one of the players was like, I'm going to, you know, carefully use my axe here to close the door here so that the creature doesn't see us. I'm like, okay, so you go over to the door, you put your axe, and at that moment, all of a sudden, the door's closed. And they're all like,
that's a healthy dose of fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like
asking an allergy question. Somebody said that they were allergic to ash and birchwood, and then within 5 minutes of the session, they came across a hole with a ladder leading down, and the player was like, "Is it wooden crumbs?" And I was like, "I don't know. Is it?" Find out.
Yeah. Maybe.
There's always that.
Yeah,
Put a bit on your tongue.
Yeah. Ask a question, and it may be it may not be inconsequential now, but you just make the note, okay, and 3 months from now, that's when it comes back into play.
Yeah.
Totally.
I
those
was asking one of my players about their family, and they started answering the questions like, well, I hadn't really thought about my family. I guess, you know, I want them to be this and this and this. And about halfway through, they stop and go, wait, you're kill them, aren't you?
That's the reason you should always have a tragic backstory, because that way there's nobody to hold against you.
I snatched somebody's brother once, just straight up snatched them. I was like, oh, you have a living sibling? No.
Not anymore.
Oh boy.
Just taken.
Mana, tell me a little bit about your idea of world games.
I typically run more roleplay heavy games. I'm not really a combat encounter heavy DM. I'm not gonna, you know, random encounters, maybe, you know, like you're traveling across wildlands, camping for 4 nights, roll once, you know, type of thing. I do like to do more roleplay heavy games, and it's not to say not encounters, because for me, at least as a DM, I like to think about the ways players can gain experience and info and other things without having to kill something for somebody, right? So they stumble across a group of pixies in the woods who just want to play a game, and the pixies won't help them unless they played the game with the pixies. You know, and so suddenly they're swinging through the tree branches using athletics and dex and all this stuff, and win or lose, the pixies are still going to help them. They don't know that, you know, or if they do, maybe if they win, the pixies are angry. Well, now we don't want to help them, and now what, you know? But having those like pockets full of games that your players can play, whether it be card games, dice games, encounters like that with the pixies that can get them help and information rather than just going to slay something for somebody. Yeah. And it kind of, for me, for the roleplay side, kind of helps break that up a little bit.
Yeah, here's just like a little psalm for all the DMs out, or DMs for like tips. Encounters and like the acquisition of XP, you get that just by overcoming an obstacle, solving a problem, whether that is a problem solved by bloodshed or diplomacy. The solving of the issue is what garners the XP.
Yeah, I think we talked about it last week. An encounter does not just mean combat. Right?
Yeah.
There are social encounters, there's traps, there's environmental encounters, there's encounters, and then of course combat, etc. But
I didn't think of it that way until literally today. I watched your video and I had a discussion elsewhere thinking about it that way, because I got introduced to D&D where encounter was combat and combat and combat and combat. Every night you were camping and you were rolling, and you were camping and you were rolling, and you were camping and you were rolling. It was just very,
Different
combat
style of play.
gets a little tedious. I mean, there are some groups that love that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That would actually be my second tip is, and this can be a little bit tougher, but I mean, you try and choose and create a campaign that works for the people that are playing. I run a few different groups. One group is heavy duty note takers, role players, etc. So that story is big on narration and intrigue and solving big long puzzles that take place over a year. That there are things that seeds that were planted a year ago that are just happening now. There's another group where no note taking. They are, murder hobos. Let's get in there and just kill whatever kind of thing. Let's steal it. Let's do that. So I'm not going to give them a campaign that requires them to keep track of, what that one NPC said, or what is that one password we found, whatever, because it just won't work for them. The best thing you can do for your players is try to find a campaign. If you're writing your own one, think of what would these players enjoy, and maybe as a DM you can also try and just gently kind of pull them along the other way as well. If they're not note takers, maybe you can kind of massage their brains a little bit into becoming note takers.
I would have to say that sometimes I would be the DM that if you have they're just constantly going through killing everything. There is that one that is the questionable time. Why did you kill him? And that would be the one, and it would take them months worth of sessions before it ever came back up again. That was the guy that knew the name you needed to speak in order to get into this place that you're trying to get into without having to, it's like impossible without this password. That guy knew it. And I would be that DM's like
consequences.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Just, it's like, maybe think about it before you stick your sword into it. It's just
But
those things where I have had them hunting for clues, and I have also, and in the middle of gently driving a railroad into a sandbox.
Yeah.
That's a good. I like that phrase, driving a railroad, or laying the tracks into a sandbox. I like that.
Yeah.
Sean,
yes.
You have one more tip here about a DM journal. Tell us about your DM journal.
Going back as far as I can remember, I've always had a book, a note. I've either had my clipboards, which will have, years worth of rolled paper edges for stuff I've had on here that's just absolutely been on this clipboard for a decade or more. But the one thing that I always have had is a journal. And I don't know if you can, it's like Joe's Book of Dirty Deeds. So I'll find a little phrase. I'll find a song lyric that can fit. You can just pull like that line or two out of a song lyric or something. And that will make it into the section of tricks, traps, and magical mischief. You're going to have those little things. So riddles. I've even gone so far as, that's a really cool fortune cookie. And I will write down the little saying. And these make it where if you just have a list of them that you can just have in there, and you're describing a scene, you're wrapping up a counter, or they've managed to crack this safe, and there's the one item that they're there for, but they say, what else is in the safe? You look here, and it could be a scroll tube, and you just throw one of these little random things in there. It could be something that they find up in a pocket. And I've actually done this a couple of times. Translate it into Latin, and let them figure it out. And then they'll it's easy enough, they can translate it, but you don't tell them the meaning behind what it actually is. It might just be this little poem. They think it's this most powerful spell that they now have to try to find a wizard that can figure out how to make it work. But it just gives you something to have, just to throw out there for, that real quick. You can have it where, it turns out it's nothing more than a love poem to some guy's, wife that never made it to her. But a riddle, it's, they find this thing's like this riddle, and it just turns out it was some bard's, oh, that one will never work. And he threw it in an alleyway, and somebody, picked it up and just stuck it in their pocket. Well, then you end up rolling that guy later on, and you're going through his pockets, and you find this crumpled note. Oh, it must be a secret. We must track this clue down. And it's the little things that can give just that little bit of flavor, a little bit of as you were saying, massage them. It might make them start wanting to, oh, what is that? What does this lead to? A lot of times it doesn't have to be anything. Sometimes if you really want to, you can have it where if this is what's going to take to get them back on track, then by all means, you let it be the key that gets them back on track. But it's a real quick, if you just have a list of them in your book, you can just flip to a page real quick, and you go down, and the sun will only shine on the days that it is not so cloudy. What does that mean? It's like, is that a passphrase to get into a secret lair?
Is that
no? It was the cookie that came with my sesame chicken. But you can
in the river.
Those little things like that you can do.
Oh, I love in my Strahd campaign. I have a 1,000 trinket roll table that I found on DM's Guild, I'm pretty sure. And so every now and then, if they're, I'm going to loot that guy. And in the book, it might say, they've got a dagger, or they've got this. And I'm like, there's nothing here. I'll pull something from there, and they'll be like, whoa. I'll say, he's got a cracked vial and it's just something random off the list. It's a cracked vial that has dirt and the seed of a flower growing in it. And they're like, whoa, what did we just get here? What's this?
Players will make anything intriguing and curious and mysterious. You have found a smooth stone that looks like it has been rubbed many times. It's a stone from a riverbed. Oh my God, what is it?
Yeah, totally. Put it in the bag of holding.
Gave one of my party members a button about 8 months ago, and they're still carrying it around.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That is amazing.
But yeah, like a common thread with a lot of all of our advice tonight, the list of trinkets, the rumor table, DM journal, giving players their own session where they're given information, even the character questionnaire, it's all just like equipping both the DMs and the players so they're prepared to improvise. a big part of improvisation is having things in the ready, because your imagination by itself can only go so far. It needs something to like cling to and jump off of, and all these different tools facilitate that.
Yeah, they're all little hooks that, and sometimes players will ignore a hook, and other times they'll totally go for the wrong one, and that's just as fun. And then every now and then they're right on the mark.
Give you one more thing.
Sure.
If you have it, it goes back to like the journal, VTT or table. I have my clipboard, and I will sit there and I will write down along the edge of it just a list of names. I will just make them up, and they will just sit there. Some will go unused for months, years. But when they decide that they need to know who that baker is, when it was just the person that they bought some breakfast from, but they got to know who that is. There's the name. I tag the name, and then I write it, and then I write it in the notes for posterity. That's the baker at such and such bakery, but have that list of names so that you never that would be, you have it.
Yeah, it saves you from calling everybody Bob or something like that.
Bob, Ali, yeah, you're 3x5s. Yep.
Yeah,
I've got my stack of NPC cards.
Thanks, everybody. Those are really good resources. I've been DMing a lot for the last 2 years. I'm a fairly late life DM, but I've been doing it a ton. And I learned a lot from you all. So thank you very much for sharing your experience. And hopefully people that watch this also learn a few things that they hadn't thought to do before.
Thanks for having us.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome host.
Oh, come again next time on midlife_dices on Twitch, but everywhere else, just at Midlife Dices. And I hope to see you again. Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.